Ace Frehley stopped playing. He reached down, turned off every effect pedal, unplugged from the processor, plugged straight into the amplifier, and played one thing. The Fillmore, San Francisco. March 1987. A Tuesday night. Not sold out, but full enough. Maybe 300 people scattered across the floor and balconies of the legendary venue where Hendrix had played, where Clapton had recorded, where every guitarist who mattered had left their mark. Ace Frehley was on stage. Solo tour. Post-kiss. Post-makeup. Just a man with a guitar, a band behind him, and a reputation that preceded him like a shadow he could never quite step out of. Showman. That's what they called him. The guy with the smoking guitar. The guy who shot rockets from his Les Paul. The Spaceman. The one who made guitar playing look like a circus act. Not a real guitarist. Just a showman. The voice came from the balcony. Loud. Drunk, probably. Aggressive, definitely. Play something real, Ace! Ace kept playing. Didn't look up. Didn't acknowledge. His fingers moved across the fretboard, hitting the notes of Rip It Out, one of his solo tracks. The band was tight. The sound was good. The audience was with him. The voice came again. Come on, Space Ace! Where's your laser show? Where's the tricks? A few people laughed. Nervous laughter. The kind that happens when someone crosses a line but nobody's sure how far. Ace's bassist glanced over at him. Ace's expression didn't change. He just kept playing, kept his eyes on his hands, kept the song moving forward. You're just a showman! The voice was louder now, emboldened by the attention. You can't really play! The song ended. Applause. Scattered, uncertain. The mood in the room had shifted. That voice had punctured something. Ace stood at the microphone. Didn't say anything. Just looked out into the darkness of the balcony where the voice had come from. The stage lights made it impossible to see faces. Just shapes. Shadows. But Ace knew exactly where the heckler was. He turned to his guitar tech standing stage right. Made a small gesture. The tech nodded, moved to Ace's pedal board, started disconnecting cables. Ace Frehley has faced thousands of hecklers across thousands of shows, but he never responded like this. He silently removed his guitar, turned off all effects, and played one thing. The tech worked quickly. Unplugged the guitar from the elaborate effects chain. The chorus, the delay, the reverb, all the processing that made modern guitar playing sound huge and polished. Unplugged from the wireless system. Grabbed a simple cable. Plugged Ace's guitar directly into his Marshall amplifier. No effects. No processing. No technology between the strings and the speakers. Raw. Ace looked at his band. Take 5, he said quietly into the mic. The first words he'd spoken since the heckling started. The drummer set down his sticks. The bassist unplugged. The rhythm guitarist stepped back from his mic. They all knew what was happening. They'd worked with Ace long enough to recognize that particular stillness in his posture. That specific quality of silence. Someone was about to learn something. The venue went quiet. 300 people sensing that whatever happened next mattered. The heckler in the balcony went silent too. Probably didn't know whether to feel victorious or worried. Ace adjusted his guitar strap. Checked his tuning. Each string, one at a time, adjusting the pegs with the precision of a watchmaker. Taking his time. No rush. The silence in the room stretched and deepened. Then he began to play. Not a song. Not a solo. Not a showcase. Bach. Jesu, Joy of Man's Desiring. The classical piece that every guitar student learns but few can play with genuine feeling. Arranged for electric guitar. No distortion. No effects. Just clean tone, pure and exposed, where every mistake would be audible, every imprecision obvious. The notes filled the Fillmore. Delicate. Precise. Each note placed exactly where it needed to be, with the dynamics of someone who understood that music wasn't about volume or speed but about the spaces between sounds. About the breathe before the phrase. About knowing when to wait. Ace didn't defend himself. He never did. The balcony heckler hadn't expected this. Nobody had. This wasn't the Ace Frehley of the Kiss posters, shooting lasers from his guitar while wearing silver boots. This wasn't the Spaceman character. This wasn't theater. This was a guitarist. Ace's fingers moved across the fretboard with the economy of someone who'd put in 10,000 hours when nobody was watching. Every note sang. Every phrase breathed. The piece was only 2 minutes long, but Ace made it feel like a prayer. The technical difficulty wasn't the point. Though anyone who'd ever touched a guitar could hear the absolute control required to play classical music on electric guitar without any effects to hide behind. The point was the choice. The decision to respond not with words, not with anger, not with showmanship, but with music itself. To answer the accusation of being fake with something undeniably real. The final note sustained, then faded into silence. Nobody applauded. Not immediately. The room was too stunned. 300 people processing what they'd just witnessed. A master class in dignity. A lesson in how to win an argument without saying a word. Then someone in the front row started clapping. Then another. Then the entire floor. Then the balconies. The applause built and built until it was thunderous, sustained, the kind of ovation that happens when an audience recognizes they've witnessed something significant. The heckler in the balcony was silent. Completely, utterly silent. Ace didn't acknowledge the applause. Didn't bow. Didn't smile. He just looked up at that balcony, made brief eye contact with the shape standing there in the darkness, and gave a small nod. Not aggressive. Not mocking. Just acknowledgement. I heard you. And this is my answer. Then he turned to his guitar tech. Hook it back up, he said quietly. Let's keep going. Subscribe and leave a comment, because some moments only make sense when we remember them together. To understand why that moment mattered, you need to understand what Ace Frehley had been carrying for 15 years. Kiss had made him famous in 1975. The makeup, the costumes, the personas. The Spaceman. Ace became a comic book character, beloved by millions of fans who bought the action figures and the lunchboxes and the posters. Kids dressed as him for Halloween. His face was everywhere. But faces can become masks. And masks can become prisons. By the early 1980s, Ace was drowning. Not in failure, Kiss was still massive. In identity. Who was he? The character? The guitarist? Both? Neither? The makeup obscured his face, but worse, it obscured his skill. People saw the smoking guitar and missed the hands that played it. Music journalists rarely wrote about his technique. They wrote about his stage presence, his persona, his contribution to the Kiss brand. When critics discussed the band's music, they focused on Gene Simmons' bass or Paul Stanley's vocals. Ace's guitar work was described as competent, or adequate, or serviceable. Adequate. After he'd played lead guitar on rock anthems that defined a generation. The frustration built slowly. Ace had grown up worshipping players like Jeff Beck and Jimmy Page. He'd spent his teenage years practicing until his fingers bled. He'd developed a playing style that was distinctly his, melodic, with that slight behind-the-beat feel that gave his solos a swagger other guitarists couldn't replicate. But people saw the smoke and the lights and assumed the music was secondary. In 1982, Ace left Kiss. The official story was about creative differences and business disputes. The real story was simpler. He needed to find out if anyone would listen to him without the costume. His first solo tour was rough. Small venues. Confused audiences who wanted the Spaceman and got just Ace. Reviews that praised his stage show but barely mentioned his playing. The cycle continued. Some nights he'd stand in the hotel room after a show and wonder if the critics were right. Maybe he was just a showman. Maybe the costume had been the only thing special about him. But then he'd pick up his guitar, play scales, run through exercises, feel his fingers remembering patterns they'd played 10,000 times. And he'd know the truth, even if nobody else seemed to see it. Real guitarists know. They can tell the difference between someone playing notes and someone making music. But the real guitarists weren't the ones writing reviews or buying tickets or shouting from balconies. So Ace kept touring, kept playing, kept refusing to explain himself. Because explanations wouldn't matter. Words wouldn't convince anyone. Only the music could. Away from the spotlight, Ace made a choice no one expected. The Fillmore show continued. Ace and his band played the rest of the set, rock songs, solo material, a few Kiss classics. The energy in the room had changed after the Bach piece. People listened differently now. Leaned in. Paid attention to the details. After the show, Ace's tour manager found him in the dressing room. "That was something," the manager said. "That Bach thing. You planned that?" "No," Ace said, wiping down his guitar. "Just happened. You should do it every night. Make it part of the set." Ace shook his head. "Won't mean anything if it's planned." The manager didn't understand, but that was okay. The point wasn't to turn Bach into a trick, another part of the show. The point had been to answer a specific challenge in a specific moment. To prove something that needed proving. Making it routine would turn it back into showmanship. An hour later, there was a knock on the dressing room door. Ace's bassist answered it. Spoke to someone briefly, then turned to Ace. "There's a guy here. Says he was in the balcony. Wants to talk to you." Ace looked up from the guitar case he'd been packing. "Send him in." The Heckler walked into the room. Mid-30s. Wearing a Zeppelin t-shirt. Sober now, and visibly uncomfortable. He stopped a few feet inside the door, hands in his pockets. "I'm sorry," he said. Not elaborating. Not explaining. Just those two words. Ace studied him for a moment. "You play?" The guy nodded. "A little. Used to anyway. Not in years." "Why'd you stop?" "Life. Work. I don't know. Just stopped." Ace reached into his guitar case and pulled out a pick. One of his signature picks, but worn. He'd been using it all night. He held it out. "Don't stop." The guy took the pick, turned it over in his fingers. Looked like he might cry. "I didn't know you could play like that." "The Bach thing. I mean, I knew you were in Kiss, but I thought." "I know what you thought," Ace said, not unkindly. "A lot of people think that. Why don't you play stuff like that more often?" "So people know?" Ace finished latching his guitar case. "People who need to see it. That's enough." The Heckler laughed with the pick. Ace's bassist watched him go, then looked at Ace. "You always that nice to people who insult you." "He wasn't insulting me," Ace said. "He was insulting what he thought I was. There's a difference." What followed silenced everyone in the room. Word spread. Not in headlines or music magazines. In the way these things always spread in the music world. Guitar shop conversations, late-night tour bus stories, musicians telling other musicians. "Did you hear what Ace Frehley did at the Fillmore?" Played Bach. Straight into the amp. No effects. Shut down a Heckler without saying a word. The story mutated as it traveled. Some versions had the audience in tears. Others had Ace playing for 20 minutes. Others had the Heckler running out of the venue in shame. But the core remained the same. Ace had answered words with music, and the music had won. 6 months later, a guitar magazine finally covered it. Small article. 3 paragraphs. Ace Frehley responds to Heckler with classical music. The writer clearly didn't understand why it mattered, treating it as a curious anecdote rather than what it actually was, a referendum on identity and authenticity. But guitarists understood. Downloads of Bach's guitar arrangements spiked. Online forums filled with musicians discussing the piece, the choice, the execution. Tributes appeared on YouTube. guitarists playing Jesu, joy of man's desiring, straight into their amps, no effects, acknowledging what Ace had done without saying his name. The pick Ace had given the Heckler never appeared on eBay. 20 years later, a music journalist tracked the man down for an article on legendary concert moments. He still had the pick. Kept it in his wallet. Changed my life, he said. Picked up guitar again the next day. Never stopped since. Ace never added Bach to his regular set list. Never planned it. Never spoke about that night in interviews. When asked years later about dealing with hecklers, he just shrugged. I don't argue, he said. I play. Share and subscribe. Some stories deserve to be remembered. The Fillmore show became legend among working guitarists. Not the Kiss shows. Not the stadium tours. Not the makeup or the smoke. That Tuesday night when a man stood alone on stage, turned off everything that could hide him, and let his hands speak. In guitar shops across America, teachers still tell students the same thing. When someone questions your ability, don't explain. Don't defend. Just play. They call it the Ace principle. He never called it anything. He just lived it.